What is going on, everyone? It is Connor, your host with the most, back here with episode number 223 of Clutch Crew Sports, and this is also the final episode of Clutch Crew Sports. It's been a really fun 3.5 years of doing this show, 200 plus episodes later of NFL, NBA, college content, and this is going to be the last episode. We, have been building up to this for a little while, ever since kind of week 7 or week 8 of the season, building that this was going to be the final year of Clutch Crew Sports after the Super Bowl. So we do still have this final episode, though. We're going to be looking at recapping what happened in the Super Bowl, as well as looking ahead for the Eagles and Chiefs as to what kind of position they're in for next season. So with that being said, like I said, we're going to go around the shield for the last time on the podcast, and Super Bowl 57 happened, and, I'm sure unless you were living under a rock, you know that the Chiefs defeated the Eagles 38-35. Really entertaining game. Lots of offense going on in this game. I know Eric and I both predicted a bit more of a high-scoring game, which did come to fruition. Their score total actually topped over what even I thought. I had the higher prediction. I said that it was going to be 35-31. Ended up being 38-35 for the Chiefs. So I did get the pick correct there. Eric and Zach picked the Eagles, so they got it incorrect. But like I said, a really entertaining game. The Eagles, all props to the Eagles in this game. They put up a really good fight. Of course, they were leading at halftime. They were going into halftime up 24-14. It looked like it might be over for the Chiefs because the possession before, Mahomes had obviously had his ankle, kind of something happened while he was scrambling, and looked like he had re-aggravated that injury, but he was able to come out in the second half and, lead the Chiefs to a victory, and he rightly won the MVP in this game. They're definitely on the Chiefs side of the ball. There really wasn't anyone who really stood out, in my opinion, in terms of MVP. This wasn't like last time where when the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, when they gave Mahomes the MVP, even though it really should have gone to probably like Chris Jones or Damian Williams. But this time around, like I said, there really wasn't anyone who really stood out. And Mahomes, gutsy performance from Mahomes to, lead the comeback and lead his team back. So I think Mahomes definitely rightly deserved the MVP here. Obviously, if the Eagles had won, it would have been Jalen Hurts who had been the MVP. He had a fantastic game. He had over 200 yards passing, 70 rushing yards, 3 total touchdowns. He really played really well, trying to silence all the doubters out there that, didn't think he can do it. And, props to the Chiefs, though, with their game plan. I mean, I basically said that if they wanted to win, they needed to put the game in Jalen Hurts' hands. And, they did that because, the Eagles really did not have much going on offense outside of Hurts. Their run game was atrocious outside of him. They didn't have, they had less than 50 total yards of rushing outside of Jalen Hurts. So the Chiefs did a really good job keeping Sanders and Gainwell in check. But Hurts, like I said, he played well. He had a few big runs. He had a few big throws that he made. He obviously did have his downs. He obviously had the, where he basically dropped, he just dropped the ball. It wasn't even like the Chiefs caused a fumble or anything. He just dropped the ball and allowed the Chiefs to pick it up, and it allowed them to pick it up and run it back to the end zone for a touchdown. So, props to the Chiefs defense there, but also, the Chiefs on offense. Mahomes had a really good game. He, like I said, playing through adversity, playing through pain, really great coaching job by Andy Reid as well in terms of offensive play calling, because those last couple of touchdowns that the Chiefs got in the fourth quarter, like the Eagles really just looked lost on those plays. Like they were easy walk-in touchdowns on those pass plays, really well-designed routes. Isaiah Pacheco had a really good game, 15 carries for 76 yards. The Chiefs were able to get the run game going. And I think the really big key here, too, for the Chiefs, big props to the Chiefs' offensive line, because, there was all this talk about how the Eagles' offensive line was the best offensive line in football, potentially one of the best offensive lines we'd ever seen ever. And, they did do really well, of course, not saying they did bad or anything, but, this Chiefs offensive line, what they were able to do, getting the run game going, giving Mahomes time to throw. This is an Eagles team that led the league with 70 total sacks this year, and they didn't get to Patrick Mahomes once in this game. They put a pressure on here or there, but No sacks in this game for the Eagles defense. I know the Chiefs offensive line was taking a lot of pride in that. They were, during the parade, they had shirts that said 0 sacks. So big props to the Chiefs offensive line for what they did in this game. Just being able to keep this Eagles team in check and help win the game for them. So, like I said, all-around entertaining Super Bowl. I know, of course, there was obviously the controversy that happened at the end as well with the holding penalty. And all I have to say about that is, it was holding. James Bradberry admitted that it was holding and that he was just kind of hoping the ref wouldn't call it. I know a lot of people, they're trying to use the argument of, oh, well, they hadn't really called that all game, so why call it in that scenario? I really just don't buy that argument, when people try and use the, oh, well, they haven't really called that all game, well, it was a penalty. You would like the officiating to be consistent, but, if that's the case and they hadn't been calling that all game, then it means they were missing a lot of holding calls that should have been called. So, like I said, you could clearly see a jersey tug. Bradberry admitted that he held him, that he was hoping the ref wouldn't see it. There's a question as to whether that ball was catchable or not, but when it comes to holding, the whole, if the ball is catchable thing doesn't come into play. That's more so on pass interference. On holding, it happens before the ball is in the air. So, it was holding. That's all I have to say about that. Anyone who wants to complain about it, maybe read a rule book. I don't know. But yeah, so the Chiefs did get the win there. So moving on now, looking at, the future for these two teams. Obviously, the Eagles, they came in with this stacked roster, this, lot of expectations. They had blown out their two previous playoff opponents. They beat the Giants 38-7. They beat the Niners 31-7. And like I said, they looked like they were going to win for a good portion of the game. I mean, this looked a lot like, in terms of, not really in terms of the amount of offense, just because there wasn't as much offense in this other one, but it looked a lot like the Chiefs' last Super Bowl win, where, for most of the game, the Niners looked like they were in control and they were headed to a Super Bowl win. And then the Chiefs were able to put together a really good, second half of the game and mostly a really good fourth quarter to come back and win the game. So, that's really what happened here. Obviously, like I said, this picture here is the one where Jalen Hurts dropped the ball. I mean, definitely something that he's going to learn from. It's just something that you can't do. I mean, it'd have been different, of course, if, one of the Chiefs players had come up behind him and gotten a strip sack or, just kind of stripped him from behind. That would have, of course, been different. But, the fact that he just kind of straight up dropped the ball is, you can't be doing that in the Super Bowl. I know you're nervous. I know there's a lot of things going on, but just a mistake that can't happen, especially given the fact that it allowed the Chiefs to pick it up and run it back for a touchdown. So, but it's one of these things this isn't the end of the road for the Eagles by any stretch. There is still some questions about, maybe some potential retirements. I know, Jason, it seems like every year we're talking about if Jason Kelce is going to retire or not. But for the most part, this team's in really good shape. I mean, it's a young team. They have a lot of good players on this defense. I know Bradberry is going to be a free agent. There's obviously questions about if Fletcher Cox is going to retire or not, but I have a feeling him and Kelce probably won't, just because I think if they had won this Super Bowl, I think Jason Kelce and Fletcher Cox and a couple of the other veterans probably would have retired. But given that they didn't win it, I do think they're probably all going to come back because, like I said, this team is still set up for success next year. I mean, the NFC is still incredibly weak. Other outside of the Niners and, probably the Cowboys and, outside of those two teams right now, I don't really see any teams that could potentially challenge the Eagles for the NFC crown. I definitely think a healthy San Francisco, with a healthy Niners team with a, actual quarterback could definitely give this Eagles team a run, but even the Cowboys, I'm not so sure if they would be able to stand up to this Eagles team right now. So they're still in a really good position. Obviously, losing team in the Super Bowl is always going to be upset. You're always going to have regrets oh, we could have done this differently. We could have done this differently. But, the Eagles definitely, they have something to hang their hats on. No one expected them to go this far. There was a lot of people that, of course, thought they were going to be better this year. Myself included. There was a lot of people that picked them to win the NFC East, but there weren't really a whole lot of people that were picking them to finish 14-3 and make it all the way to the Super Bowl. So, definitely something that they can build on for future to come. Jalen Hurts just has to keep it up. He definitely proved a lot of doubters wrong in the Super Bowl, but there's still more work to do, in my opinion, for him. Now is like, okay, you had one really good season. Now you need to build on that and make sure that that's not your only good season, because there's definitely quarterbacks we've seen in the past that'll have a really good MVP caliber season, and then they just sort of fall off after that. I mean, Cam Newton's a great example of that. He had kind of been building his first few years, and then he finally broke out and had that big 2015 season, and then after that, it was like we never heard from Cam Newton again. Like he kind of just disappeared back into mediocrity. So that's definitely going to be important for Hurts to just keep building, keep improving, so that way, you don't become like the Cam Newtons of the world where you just are kind of just remembered for one good season and then you didn't really do anything after that. So, but like I said, there's a lot for this Eagles team to be happy about. They have a lot of pieces coming back. Their offense is pretty much going to remain intact, unless, like I said, unless Kelsey decides to retire, but I don't think he will. I know Lane Johnson's supposed to be having surgery in the offseason, but he should be full strength by the time the season starts. On defense, like I said, they do have Bradbury as a free agent. There's obviously still questions as well with Fletcher Cox, but this defense should also still be in a good spot going forward. And, they're going to definitely open as the early favorites to repeat as NFC champions, and for good reason. So that's going in for the Eagles, the Super Bowl losers. Of course, moving on to the winners now, the Kansas City Chiefs. They just all props to Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and this team. I mean, there was a lot of people this year that and us here on the podcast are included in this. Like, a lot of people who didn't believe in the Chiefs this year. They thought, the loss of Tyreek Hill was going to be too big for Mahomes to overcome. They thought, oh, well, he just lost one of his best weapons. Like, this offense isn't going to be the same. And they balled out without Tyreek Hill. I mean, Mahomes led the league in passing, won league MVP. The Chiefs had the number one offense this year. They were able to do just as well, if not better, without Tyreek Hill as they did with Tyreek Hill. And like I said, there was a lot of doubting along the way. On the podcast here included, this was the first year out of the four Super Bowls that of the four like conference championship preseason predictions that we've made, this was the first of the four where none of us had the Chiefs going to the AFC title game. It was Eric and I didn't even have the Chiefs winning the division. I know I had the Chargers winning the division. Eric had the Raiders winning the division. Zach did still have the Chiefs winning the division. But again, like none of us had them going to the AFC title game or even sniffing the Super Bowl. We all thought it was going to be either the Bills or, potentially someone like I know Eric had the Bengals. I had the Chargers. No, none of us thought the Chiefs were going to be here. And here they are proving us all wrong. So, Patrick Mahomes, I mean, I don't think there's any doubt in anyone's mind right now that he's the best player in football. I mean, there was kind of like after last year, a lot of people were thinking, maybe, Josh Allen or Joe Burrow's emerging as the best quarterback in the NFL. But I don't think there's any question in my mind, and there really shouldn't be any question in anyone's mind, that Mahomes is the best QB. He's the best player in the league right now. And, there's the scary part is that, of course, there's still room for the Chiefs to do more. I mean, outside of Kelsey and, a couple other players on this team, like this is still a really young team. I mean, they were able to make it work with this new receiving core with Juju Smith-Schuster and Marquez Valdes-Scantling. They've got a really good, nice young offensive line. Pacheco really emerged as a good running back this year. He's really young. You've got they definitely have room for improvement, of course, on the defense. That secondary definitely needs a lot of work. They're definitely going to be looking for mostly corner pieces in the offseason, whether it be through free agency or the draft. But this is a team that, of course, is poised. They could do it again. They talk about the Chiefs emerging as the newest dynasty in the league. And I mean, I think for me, like in order to be classified as a dynasty, you have to win 3 Super Bowls. But hey, if they win another Super Bowl here in the next couple of years, then yeah, I'm definitely comfortable with calling them a dynasty. I mean, they've already made 5 straight AFC championship appearances. Like, this is a team that they're always in it somewhere, somehow at the end. And, shame on all of us for doubting them this year, and they definitely proved all the doubters wrong. And like I said, I could easily see them ending up in this spot next year again. Obviously, it's still harder for them than it would be for the Eagles just because the AFC is more competitive. You still have the likes of like the Bengals and the Bills and, the Dolphins and, other pieces in the AFC that should, be able to compete with them and be able to, uh, help make sure that the Chiefs don't make it back to the Super Bowl again. I know a lot of people are starting to get Chiefs fatigue. It's like you've been seeing the Chiefs in this position every year now for the past 5 seasons. It's like, you don't want to see them in this position again. So we'll see how it goes going forward. But both of these teams are definitely in a really good spot to potentially get back here and potentially, win again next year. So with all that being said, like I said, this is the final episode of Clutch Crew Sports. It's been a good ride. Like I said, we've been doing this for the last 3.5 years. We've been through, 4 NBA finals, 4 Super Bowls, 4 college football national championship games, 223 episodes, not all of them, of course, being sports. We went through the whole COVID pandemic, where we basically had to, for a whole, 5 to 6 months, we had to come up with a whole bunch of different content because all the sports were being postponed or canceled, and, had to fight through some stuff there. And of course, just Eric mentioned it last time too. Like, this was really a fun thing that really brought the 3 of us, me, Zach, and Eric, closer together. I know like Zach and Eric definitely had some, they were definitely closer because of the fact that they lived a lot closer, but this also brought me a lot closer to them. We, were able to get together and do this. Zach brought up the idea of doing a podcast on sports, and I thought, oh, that sounds like a fun idea, because, all of us are really, we like to research this stuff. We like to talk about this stuff. So to be able to have a platform to do it was really fun for the last 3.5 years. And, it's obviously a shame that we weren't able to get more traction as a channel. We had kind of flashes or moments where I thought, oh, maybe this is going to be the turnaround, but never really happened, never really materialized. So that's definitely the main reason why this is ending now. Obviously disappointed that the guys couldn't finish out the podcast with me. But, I've had fun these last few weeks, just, I should say more than a few. Like I said, really ever since like week 8 of the NFL season, I've had fun doing this on my own, being able to take it in my own direction. So, thanks to everyone who gave any episode a watch, any episode a listen, left any sort of comment, the like button, hitting that for us. Just Eric mentioned some of our fans from the past that we've interacted with, like Jackson and Aaron Swarm, and some of the other people on Twitter that we interacted with either on Twitter or on Twitch. We had some guests on here as well. I'd have to go back through the archives to find them, but thanks to anyone who watched this show and was dedicated enough to it to listen to more than just one episode. Big shout out to Brody Sports Talk, Caleb, Derek. I know, of course, Sean. He's not on Brody Sports Talk anymore, but shout out to Sean too, if he ever listens to this, just because he was also part of Brody Sports Talk when we started collabing with them early on. So big shout outs to them. I know they're still going. They're still making new episodes, so make sure you guys go check out Brody Sports Talk. Also, big shout out to the Hard Count podcast guys. It's a shame that this isn't continuing. We could never, have a situation where we could try and collab, but you guys definitely towards the latter half of our show, you were commenting on our episodes and watching and giving us feedback on stuff. So big shout out to you guys as well. Of course, they're also still going, so make sure you go and give them a watch or a listen and check them out. So shout outs all around, but like I said, this is it. This is the end. I'm not sure what I'm going to potentially do with this channel. I've thought about potentially at some point or another, maybe reviving not Clutch Crew Sports, but maybe, doing some other sort of podcast or show or something. But, regardless of that, Clutch Crew Sports is coming to an end. Like I said, not sure what the future of the channel is going to be, but definitely need some time off. I've been doing this nonstop for the last 3.5 years, so definitely need some time off to decide what to do with the future of the channel and what to do going forward. But with that being said, guys, I will sign it out for the final time. Shout outs to Zach and Eric as well. Obviously, they're not here, but, they were just as much a part of this as I was. And, I'll give Zach's line, in everything you do, remember, be clutch. And for Eric, peace.